The City of Joburg convenes its second sitting for the year today. It will elect chairpersons of oversight committees for MMCs appointed by Mayor Mpho Phalatse. The DA leads a multi-party coalition with 9 parties, but their seats fall short of the 50% plus one. Al-Jamaa dropped out of the coalition last week. The DA is vulnerable. If the ANC can secure the EFF's support, it can take over the city. Well, let me take you to eNCA's Govan Whittles, who follows these stories in great detail than I do. Firstly, Govan, let's clarify. This is the second sitting, is it not? The first one is where the mayor and speaker and others were elected. But being the second, as far as I understand, it's nonetheless quite significant.
Of the interview panel.
Yeah, it's the second sitting of the new council, and this is the sitting where the council's business really gets laid out for the year. So it is the second one. At the first one we had those elections and it was very tight, very hot, and today we're expecting more of the same. That's because of the chairpersons of oversight committees expecting to be elected, and overnight there has been some developments. To we understand that the Patriotic Alliance will now be voting with that multi-party coalition, and that will push it over the line and give it the majority that it needs. Al-Jamaa similarly willing to go with Action SA in that coalition, and that's all because the EFF and the ANC have struck a deal to try and field candidates and take the position of chair of chairs, which is much coveted and something that the multi-party coalition will be hoping to defend. Let's speak to Mr. Mashaba now. He's my guest this morning, just about the first council sitting, the second council sitting. Councillor Mashaba, thank you so much. So the majority of the multi-party coalition will be put to the test here with the election of chairs of oversight committees. What do you think will happen?
Well, I think let us all as South Africans appreciate and understand the dynamics and the complexities of a multi-party government and a coalition arrangement. A coalition arrangement not created by us, created by the voters out there. So for us as political parties, we do everything possible to ensure that we can ultimately have a stable government. And the only way you can have a stable government, that's when you have the majority. So right now, yes, our coalition team has been involved with negotiations, but I don't think I would really like to really preempt the outcome, because council will be voting on the chairpersons of the committees to hold the government accountable. So if you don't mind, in a few hours' time you will have the outcome. I think let me not really preempt until such time that it actually happens.
And of course you'll have to be in council. Your vote very important with that seat. Let's just move on to the other issue. We've seen the news of the death of 5 security guards at the Devlin landfill site. There was a moment of silence in council as well. What's your comment as Action SA?
It's very angry. Personally, I think the loss of our lives, I think, our country loses so many lives and totally unnecessary. I mean, during now the break I called the MMC son and MMC Tembe to say, please, can you guys engage the highest law enforcement agencies to really deal in this matter, because we cannot afford to really lose lives and really take this matter lightly. So yes, I'm requesting them to ensure that they engage our law enforcement agencies, SAPS, the WOGs, the NPA, to ensure that we go into this matter. The perpetrators of this heinous crime must be brought to book.
And finally then, Mr. Mashaba, the former members of Action SA, the ones whose membership was terminated, are going ahead with their march this afternoon. They're no longer members of Action SA, but they want the Speaker to take some action. I think they're asking for the resignation of all Action SA councillors. What do you think of the march going ahead?
Well, I think if one looks at the constitution of Action SA, there isn't any provision for us to really entertain the people who have decided to not really be members of our organization. But one of our guys will go and receive their memorandum, and we'll see what they want, and we will accordingly respond.
Thank you so much. That's Mr. Herman Mashaba. Councillor Mashaba is returning into council in a short while, and his vote will be very important as that multi-party coalition's majority is put to the test. So as you can see, Tillis, there's already a lot of stuff happening on the second sitting. There's the march by former Action SA members, there's the election of the chairpersons of oversight committees, and then the opposition in council have questioned whether the mayor has the authority committee to appoint the leader of executive business. They asked for legal opinion on that, and the Speaker said, well, we'll debate this matter at Salga because there does seem to be need for some change. And I think we have some visuals of the marches coming across the street now. We'll try to give you those as they're happening. Please bear in mind we're trying to shoot through a window here, so you may not be able to see it clearly, but there you see them. It's a handful of people. Looks like there are about 30 of them to 50 of them, and those are members of Action SA, former members of Action SA, who say they have large constituencies in Soweto and who had wanted council seats, who wanted to be appointed to council. You'll see in the distance there appears to be more of them that are coming. So an eventful start to 2022 here at the Johannesburg Council Chambers in Braamfontein, JMPD out on site as well. But of course the main action will come in council once the election of those chairpersons of oversight committees gets underway.
Indeed, Govan, and the problems begin for Herman Mashaba and the leadership of Action SA. What with that much, but also the situation around Makosi Khoza in KwaZulu-Natal. But let me just ask you one more question before we release you, Govan. You follow these things very closely, and therefore you can easily connect what's happening. You mentioned two very significant things, and I think you moved quite swiftly. We were reporting that Al-Jamaa pulled out of that coalition situation, but now we are reporting that Patriotic Alliance says they'll go where Action SA goes. Am I correct? Just run that by me once again. Who's on board? Who's no longer on board?
That's right, Tulasiwe. These are the latest developments which emanate from last night's negotiations between these multi-party coalition partners. And 2 days ago, Al-Jamaa actually sat down with the ANC where some of those disagreements emerged. And let's start with Al-Jamaa. Essentially, they pulled out of the multi-party coalition, saying they couldn't vote for the government run by Mpho Phalatse because they disagree with the Democratic Alliance's stance on Israel. They then met with the ANC, and we understand in that meeting, Al-Jamaa told the ANC it would not help the ANC collapse the municipality and collapse this council. It would rather vote for whoever Herman Mashaba and Action SA is voting for. So that is a softer endorsement of the very same multi-party coalition, which it initially said it couldn't support because of the Israel issue. And then the Patriotic Alliance had learnt of a new deal which had been struck between the ANC and the EFF. This is late last night, Tulasiwe. And in response to that, the Patriotic Alliance, which was not willing to enter the multi-party coalition because it didn't get MMC positions and wanted the mayorship position, said they would rather vote for the multi-party coalition led by the DA than to give the EFF or the ANC the chair positions or chairpersons of oversight committee positions. And we understand from within the multi-party coalition that the Patriotic Alliance will be getting 3 chairpersons of oversight committee positions. The Democratic Alliance will keep 7, and then the rest will be split among the smaller parties. Looks like Action SA will also get oversight of the mayor's office and the city manager, which is, of course, a very valuable oversight position and coveted among the multi-party coalition partners. So that's the latest, and essentially what we're waiting for here at the council chambers is to see whether those negotiations from last night play out as the parties wanted them to play out. Initial indications from the opposition parties, the ANC, the EFF, AIC, PAC, are that they seem aware that the multi-party coalition does have a majority, and they'll try to undermine that majority. They called for a 30-minute adjournment a little bit earlier, but nothing came of it. The balance of forces, as they say, still stands as it was last night, and it looks like it will follow through after lunch.
All right, fascinating, always intriguing. It's either a game of chess or the Game of Thrones in some of these councils, particularly in Johannesburg. That's eNCA's Govan Whittles. If you want real insights that help you understand the dynamics of local governance, he's your guy. Is our Govan Whittles. Fascinating. Never a dull day in our politics, especially in this age of coalition governments. Remember, the DA and other parties in these coalition arrangements, in some instances, they've formed what they call minority governments. And they have been working since the elections in November to try and move those from minority governments to, a coalition that as a bloc represents 50% plus one, which they say would provide for more stable governance, and other than, a situation where you are a minority government and you can be changed and removed at any moment and be stymied in following through on some of your programs of action.